Web2 companies are dead already. They just don't know it.
What's Opolis is today?
Opolis is a member-owned digital employment cooperative. We do offer health insurance as a benefit to our members, but what we are selling is employment.
Well, one other project that was ETHDenver.
My job was to go and build reputation.
Welcome everyone. This is DAO Heroes, a YouTube channel about the future of Web3 and people who define that future, people who create DAOs, who work in DAOs, invest in DAOs. Today we have a very special guest, 0xJoshua.
Thanks,
he
Jerry.
is from a huge number of projects. The main one is Opolis, but there are so many NFT collections, events, Web3 startups, a huge journey, a lot of experience. Our primary theme is about members and contributors and compensation, but we're gonna touch a lot of stories and basically what works, what doesn't. Let's dive in. And for more episodes like this, please, like and subscribe. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Yuri.
So you started in Web 2, moved to Web 3. What were the stops along the way?
I had a full career in democratic politics before burning out of that and moving to China. I was a teacher, fell in with a group of engineers who were like, you've got a mind for technical things. You should go study, become a developer. And that night I went home and I got a phishing email from a coding boot camp in Tel Aviv. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to go with the flow. I responded, I filled out, I took a test. And then I turned to my now wife and said, we're going to be moving to Israel. And the first thing she did was Google Tel Aviv and saw buses exploding and rockets. And she's like, I'm not going. I was like, no, you don't have to worry. I've been before. It's no big deal. So I started getting into tech. That was the first time I'd heard about Bitcoin. And it was in the context of a friend who was using it to buy illegal drugs on Silk Road. And I was like, I don't need illegal drugs, so I don't need Bitcoin. But opportunity missed back at $300. Moved back to the US, did a little bit more politics while I was looking for a tech job. Long story short, there I ended up at Lyft, where I was in driver growth and competitive intelligence. I got to meet a lot of drivers. I spent a lot of time in the gig economy. I was actually started as a rideshare driver and before I went to Lyft corporate and got to experience some of the problems with the healthcare industry firsthand. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. Was there for a few years. Our department got the company IPO ready. And then they said, yeah, you guys can't exist after the IPO. So you can find another job at the company, or I wasn't going to take the job 105 in San Francisco. And I was in a Consensus Academy class at the time. I met Jacob Cantelli, who was like, you should come work at Consensus. So I ended up at Consensus. This was my first experience in a DAO. It was on Panvala, which got spun out from Consensus, but it's still around. And we actually just did an engagement with Panvala through Opolis for a stamp. But Consensus does this thing where they hire too many people and then they try to do an investment round and they're like, your burn rate's too high. You need to cut some fat. And so Panvala was one of those teams that got spun out. This was February 2020. And I was like, I caught the bug. I was just starting to get into Web3. DeFi was starting to become a thing, kind of. The concept, the department was there and people were starting to experiment with things. And I was like, I want to stay in this space. So I was like, I'm going to go to ETHDenver. I'm going to find a job. And I walked around saying, I got my Cobra packet. And Cobra, for anyone who's not in the US, is this system by which you can access your previous health insurance through your employer, but you pay full rate. So it was $2,400 a month. And I was like, this is not something that I can afford, having just lost my job. So I walked around ETHDenver saying, who knows a Web3 alternative to ridiculous healthcare premiums? And everyone was like, have you met John Paller? You should go talk to Opolis. I met John and I called him. I said, hey, I'm used to doing referrals. This sounds like a great thing. Can I sign up for it? And I ended up being the first employee member of what was their new product. So the Opolis was a traditional PEO, which is like a payroll provider, employer of record, like ADP, TriNet. They were in the process of pivoting to focusing on the solopreneur, the individual, the self-employed, because the companies that existed target companies of 50 plus. It's not economically viable to go after smaller numbers. Then the Silicon Valley brood come around and Gusto, where they're like, yeah, if you've got 3, 5, 10 employees, we can accommodate you. You're still not getting a great rate, but they're at least covering you. But nobody was focusing on the individual. I was like, hey, John, I want to sign up for this. And I'd also like to make referrals if they're I know people who Democratic operatives, people who work in politics on both sides, actually. Rideshare drivers, all these different things were coming to mind. He's like, well, the product is free. So there's not really commission, but like we could make you an advisor. And maybe if in the future there are ever tokens, you could probably earn some of those. I was like, deal. Yeah, cool. All right. I've been making referrals and John calls me up and there's the timing, things that my life timed just perfectly. Just things happen and I get to say yes at the right moment. So John calls me and says, hey, you've been doing good work for us. We got PPP approved. We have an extra slot. Are you interested in coming working full time? I started working for Opolis. My job was to set up meetings for John. Let's say I'm trying to get Yuri from Superdao to sign up, call up Yuri and say, hey, can you meet with John? He'd love to talk to you about Opolis. He's also the founder of ETHDenver. And exactly one person said no in the entire time that I did that. And eventually I knew the pitch well enough to be able to just start having those conversations on my own. But before that, like nobody wanted to talk to me. I didn't have any reputation in the space. And this is what I think is the most interesting side of it. My job was to go and build reputation. I was able to successfully build a reputation for myself through the profile of Opolis. And since we've helped a little over 350 people who work throughout the DAO space be able to access health insurance and process crypto payroll.
So you're still there. What's the current definition of the role, or like what's the title system at Opolis?
We use a steward titling system. So everyone is the steward of something. You don't have a job. You don't work for Opolis. You don't work for John. You work with Opolis. You're a steward and not an officer because there's an inherent responsibility that you have to the community, to your fellow stewards, to the members who are onboarding, and holding the title of steward helps to kind of shape that, a lack of entitlement. I started as a membership steward. After about a year, I think got promoted I became an executive membership steward, got moved over from membership or it grew into what we're calling community because it became this like broader ecosystem from just, I need to meet with people one-on-one and onboard them. I recently have changed titles again to executive steward for partnerships and ecosystem.
Perfect.
So
Wow.
breaking alpha here on the Superdao channel.
Yay, exclusive. Maybe let's refresh what Opolis is today. Obviously, every organization evolves. So my understanding is generally you help with crypto payroll and health insurance for people who have this non-traditional crypto native way of being employed through kind of DAO contributor role. So can you expand on that and like how exactly does it work? Do you have a single offer or multiple services or products? Like how does it work?
I'll start by saying it's not just for Web3 people. So we do have members who are doctors, lawyers, accountants, graphic designers, anybody who is self-employed. Opolis is a member-owned digital employment cooperative, the primary service of which is payroll. We do offer health insurance as a benefit to our members, but it's not something we sell. What we are selling is employment. You are becoming a co-employee of the cooperative. The primary product is payroll. So we're going to be able to process your fiat or crypto payroll through us compliantly. And through processing your payroll as part of the paycheck process, you get access to our group rate health insurance, dental insurance, vision. The premiums get deducted right off of your paycheck. It's not something you have to think about. It's pre-tax. It just gets written off as an expenditure from the LLC that we help you set up. We also pay the state, local, and federal taxes that you owe. And in that includes Social Security, Medicare, workers' comp, and unemployment insurance. The effective tax rate comes out to pretty similar to the self-employment tax, except for you're getting access to all of these benefits and social funds that you should be paying into. And if you ever need them, have access to, whereas a self-employed person, you wouldn't have access to those.
You mentioned you set up individual LLCs for every person who comes through Opolis. So they both have the individual LLC and become a member of your kind of centralized employment organization, or how does it work?
You actually need an LLC that elects either S or C Corp at the federal level to be able to join the cooperative. This de-risks you in the various employment situations that you're engaging in. So when you contribute to a DAO, if you're doing it just as yourself, you're opening yourself up to some significant liability as a potential general partner. You're also de-risking yourself from the other members of the co-op. Let's say you're there's a dev for a protocol that's doing some sketchy things. Like, let's say that protocol ends up under the ire of some sort of alphabet soup agency. It's not going to affect the rest of the cooperative. And it's also good business practices. So a lot of people treat their like 1099 income like a piggy bank. And it's very hard to keep track of your books. You don't really have to have any of those kind of, you've got your corporate books, you have your personal books. We make the personal books incredibly easy because your company is getting an invoice for your salary. You tell us what you want your salary to be. And then your personal, you're getting a W-2. You just hand the W-2 over to the CPA. And then on the business side, any money you're not processing through Opolis, you can put into your own retirement accounts, like the self-directed stuff, business travel, going to conferences, flights, hotels, that business dinner where you buy that bottle of Clase Azul to woo the table.
Now I think I have a good picture of what Opolis is and wow, it's so important, especially as more and more people are self-employed or flexibly employed or employed across multiple part-time. Now, you joined a bunch of DAOs. I understand as a member or contributor, you're like in 5, 10, 20, I don't know how many. What are some of your favorite ones there? Like, what lessons have you drew when you joined so many? And what becomes obvious once you start seeing the patterns?
I think this happens to a lot of people where you show up to a DAO, you say, hi, I'm here. These are my skills. I want to do work. And people don't really believe you at first, or they'll give you a small task, or they'll say, all right, hop on this call. And then you join a call and it's a new project. And it's like, all right, we're going to get this thing done. And you get assigned a task and you have to do the thing. It's like group projects. It's, when we were at school, right? The problem is, that takes a while. So you show up to like 15 DAOs, you raise your hand at all of them, and then you have no work for like 6 weeks. But then, like clockwork, on the 43rd day, all of the DAOs say, all right, you're here, let's do work. And it's like, okay, I had time. I no longer have time. And then you're faced with this really difficult position of choosing, like, who are you going to drop the ball for? I don't think that when I stopped actively contributing to DAOs, I dropped the ball in many places. But I definitely, it was a cognizant thing where I was like, I'm going to step back from being an active contributor, which DAO House, it's my favorite, DAO factory structure. The people there are just the unsung heroes of the Web3 space. And so I think DAO House does a really good job of teaching people, this is how you interact with the space responsibly. And I wish that they got a lot more attention. That is also in the Metacartel ecosystem. And then Raid Guild was probably the one I started contributing to first. So Raid Guild is a Web3, it's like slay your Web3 demons. They call themselves mercenaries, but it's not really that evil sounding. They, you hire them to do a project. You've got a big project. There's a component of it that you need to outsource. You'd hire Raid Guild. They perform top quality work in reasonably short amounts of time. And I don't go on raids. I'm a hunter, which means I help them find new business, except for it got to the point where they were at capacity and didn't need me as much anymore. I kind of more generically, and I don't take payment. I don't submit reports or whatever. Just will advocate for them, like I'm doing right now, to say they're great. You should use them.
It felt for me almost like the reinvention of sales. Is instead of having commission salespeople, you have these kind of advocates or contributing hunters or
Yeah. This is all right. So this opens the thing that I've been talking about the most on Twitter recently, and to anyone who will listen, is that this line that Web2 companies are dead already, they just don't know it. And this is part of that model in which I'm a loyal brand consumer. Most people are loyal to the brands that they shop, right? Most people are generally loyal to saving money, depending on the economy, but are generally brand loyal. When companies that are in the Web2 world give me a status, so I will almost always only stay at Hilton, because they give me free water and they're going to upgrade my room and whatever other perks. But when a hotel chain comes along that's going to give me, instead of Hilton points, which are worth fuck all, a token where I actually am earning equity in the company. So you stay in one of the rooms, you're earning shares in the company. That's going to end every other model.
Alongside the journey, so you moved from Lift and Consensus to other Web3 stuff. So Opolis gave you the main home, but at the same time, just through the work of representative and kind of hunter for Opolis. You joined a bunch of other DAOs to be a valuable contributor and build a relationship and so on. And so one other project that was like overseeing a lot of that is ETHDenver. It's a conference, it's a community. It's also a publisher of a big NFT collection. And it's like a cornerstone for a lot of things. So tell us what role you play there, how you got there, where ETHDenver is going, what are the main kind of lessons there?
It is more than a conference. So we call it a global innovation festival. It's a conference plus a hackathon plus an art festival plus a lot of things. We've tried to do big things and keep a small vibe. How I ended up there was, so John is actually, he's the founder of Opolis, but he's also the founder of ETHDenver. And people who contribute to Opolis naturally get commandeered into also contributing in ETHDenver. And it's something that I volunteered. It's a pleasure to do. I love Bufficorns. The vibe was amazing. It was where I met a bunch of people who are now my best friends for the first time. Magical things happen at ETHDenver. And we just did the 5th one in February. We have outgrown the sports castle and we're looking at larger venues to be able to accommodate more people so that there are no lines outside, which was the primary complaint that we had this year. But we did expand to 6 venues, and I think a lot of people just didn't realize that there was a lot going on in the 5 other venues. Yeah, and so my role as Superdao treasurer and as the lead steward for the Bufficorn Build Brigade is to make sure that we're providing significant utility and value to these NFT holders, both at the event and after this year, year round. And the last thing that I'd want to mention is to complete the circle of making ETHDenver self-sustaining so that it will be free forever because we don't charge attendees, is Bufficorn Ventures, which is a venture fund that Superdao, the parent DAO of ETHDenver, launched to invest in early stage Colorado-based and or ETHDenver hackathon projects, because what ETHDenver draws a lot of Web2 hackers. They'll see the $2 million in bounties that we offer and they'll get excited and, I want to experience this thing. Oh, it's a free ticket. Flights to Denver are cheap on Southwestern United, sure. And so we get a lot of Web2 developers who will come, they'll hack, they'll win, and then they go back to their Web2 job because they'll win $5, $10, $15, $20,000, and it's not enough to quit your job. So what we'd like to do is be like first money in the door, seed the company, give them 6 months to a year worth of runway, or at least help lead a round where they can raise 6 to a year worth of runway and say, quit your job, like do it, come build the thing that you just got us all inspired by. And so that's what Bufficorn Ventures is hoping to help deliver value to the community. Most of the profits, so some of the profits are going to go back to the partners, but most of the profits are going to go back to the sport holders and into ensuring that ETHDenver remains free for attendees forever.
A few more words on the collection. So you have an NFT collection. It's a Buffalo themed and
Bufficorn themed.
Yes, right. Buffalo plus unicorn. What do members get? And is it the same collection for all the years, or is it like a new edition or new series every year?
We don't have plans for another PFP collection. We did announce on our roadmap that we would be breeding the Bufficorns. So you're not going to be able to buy a Buffagway, but you will be able to breed one. And so I just want to show as an example. So this was one of the volunteer shirts. This is one of my Bufficorns, the full set fit. They changed it a little bit because it has a rainbow headband, but if we used all the colors, the shirt would have been like $1,000. It's got these different traits on it. It's holding a thing. It's got a shirt. It's got a mouth and a different horn and fur. And the NFT primitive that we actually introduced is trait swapping. And the smart contracts for that are being built right now. We have an engagement with Raid Guild. To where if you have, let's say you're holding a yerba mate and I'm holding this spork and you want the spork and I want the yerba mate, we can swap. And so we're writing a smart contract that'll make it so that 2 Bufficorn holders can graze their Bufficorns and swap traits. And this is not something that people think that the NFT that they have is like the art in it is that forever. And that's just not true. It's all metadata that can be changed. And we've been clear about that, and we're really excited to experiment with it.
That was one of the most unique episodes on the channel so far. It was a personal journey through a bunch of projects, starting in Web2 and then politics and all kinds of things, and then moving to programming, Web3, contributing to a bunch of DAOs at the same time, scaling back some places, increasing engagement in others, taking your role of like Web3 version of sales and community advocate, and like going through different titles and promotions. That gives a taste of how different the careers and trajectories in Web3 are, how much more exciting, flexible, fluid they are. And it's not just a lot of facts that we learned today, but just inspiration and reference point of of how this new world is kind of shaping up. Josh, maybe any last words? We were so grateful for you to stopping by.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It makes me feel really, really good about. I mean, I always feel good doing these because I like talking about the journey. But that was a very nice thing to say. Thank you, Yuri. I'd say that my DMs are always open to anybody who wants to talk and learn about making the conversion from Web 2 to Web 3, DAOs that you want to get involved with.
I enjoyed this as well. Thanks, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe if you want more episodes like this one. We try to paint the picture what Web3 is, where it's going, what's happening. Thanks, everyone. And until the next time.